much all for joining, and yeah, please welcome.
I'm very excited about this one. I think when I was asked to host a panel that was called "Why Am I So Tired, Angry and Sad?" I was like, yes, please. Like, that's exactly what I want to talk about. We've got a really fantastic lineup today. So I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves because I think that's easiest on a Zoom call. So Jupiter, I'll start off with you.
Cool. Hi, my name is Jupiter Hadley. I'm a games journalist that specializes in smaller game jam games, and I cover lots and lots of game jam games on YouTube and on various websites. I'm the I'm the licensing manager at Armor Games, where I find free-to-play browser-based games and put them on our web platform. And I also work for Torius Play Studio, where I'm the community DJ, and I help run a lot of their games.
Fantastic. Anna, how about you?
Hi, I'm Anna Mancy. I head up the certification unit at the British Film Institute and predominantly deal with film, animation TV, kids TV and video games in relation to our tax reliefs. But I'm also a trustee for Games Aid along with Des, and I'm a patron for Safe in Our World, the games industry mental health charity.
Oh, that's a fantastic charity. So you mentioned Des, so Des, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name's Des, and I am the production manager at a indie label called Fellow Traveller. As Anna mentioned, I'm the chair of Games Aid, a charity based in the UK, primarily focused on young people. And I'm also one of the founding members of a inclusion group called POC in Play, which helps to address issues for people of colour, both on the screen and behind the screen.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Tobias.
Yeah, I'm Tobias Kopka. I'm festival director of LUDICIOUS and grew up in the demo scene of the 90s and 2000s. I had running events for like 20, depends on in the scene for like 20 years, I would say, and in game development since 13 years. So always developer conferences because of this background, like in the coding community. But always more a person behind the scenes, bringing people together and to seeing what happens if people go on stage.
Well, I'm glad we've got you in front of the camera for once then. So obviously today we're talking working from home, how to kind of stay creative, stay productive, but also look after your mental health. And obviously until recently, working from home wasn't something everybody did. And now suddenly we're all having to kind of grapple with this new reality. So I'm going to start off by asking each of our panelists kind of what their life was like working, if they worked from home, and if they did, what it was like to work from home pre-pandemic. And Jupiter, I know that you have worked from home for all of your adult life, so I'll start off with you.
So I work for an American company and I live in the UK, so obviously it's a bit of a commute, so I don't, and I've been working from home my whole life, and it's been a challenge. When I first started working from home, I worked kind of like I do in lockdown. I didn't go out. I tried to get as much done during the day. I worked really weird hours with no actual shut-off time, and then I realized that's really unhealthy, and you don't get a lot done, and you burn out. And so I sort of switched to 2 days a week. I went out in the evenings, if it was just like to the movies or to something in the evening to go for a walk. And then on the weekends, I always went out every weekend, at least one of the days, and just did something not in my house, not in my office, to get a better mindset, really.
Lovely. Well, I know, Des, you're somebody that works everywhere. So tell us about, what your work from home experience was like pre-pandemic.
Yeah, so similar to Jupiter actually. So I'm based in Germany, and I've got clients in Australia and the UK, and one in Canada. So yeah, quite the commute on a round trip with that one. So luckily, working from home has been great for me. So we moved out to Germany a couple of years ago, and one of the stipulations to my wife was like, we need somewhere where I can have a separate office. Because one of my flaws is I'm a workaholic, and we used to have a tiny flat in London, and I'd used to work from the kitchen table, so there was no separation from work and home time. But now, like once we're here, like I've got a dedicated office, and it's like downstairs in the basement, so I have to come here to do stuff. Like I don't just be like, oh, there's a laptop, I just do something. It's been great to have a purposeful space for that, and obviously quite fortunate on that front. But yeah, and I guess logistically, like software and tech wise, it's fine, but there's some hardware issues that make working from home a little bit restrictive. But there's ways around that.
So Tobias, obviously you've worked in events for a very long time. So how much working from home could you actually do before all of this?
It's actually, I learned over the last 4 months to learn a little bit about my personality, because it was always usually, let's say, 50% travel, 50% work from home. And this work from home is usually then more in waves, and it leads to the events, like going to other or to my own. And now I realized that I really see getting this energy from the travel. And now I have to find out actually where, if you're working for a very long time at home, that it has definitely a different perspective as if you can go outside for the time. So usually it's like 180 days a year is travel, and the rest is really working from here at home, because my team, I forgot to mention, is also in Dubrovnik, and we also ran a conference with Reboot in Canada, like in Banff this year, first time, at least so far, the beautiful plan, and then reality kicks in. So
I was at that conference in Dubrovnik before.
Yeah.
Oh no, carry on.
No, but did I answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, no, you were just making me reminisce, because I've been to that conference in Dubrovnik, and I was like, let's have all conferences, on the beach in Dubrovnik. That was, that's a good one. I definitely miss conferences like that. And so obviously, Anna, you're our last speaker on this. So I know you mentioned you have kind of a setup that sees you in and out of the office, but does that necessarily mean at home?
So we, BFI is quite a big organisation. There's about 500 of us, but we went to agile working a couple of years ago. So basically, I have a team of 10, but we have 6 desks, because there's always someone going to an event or a conference or in meetings, and we cross, 5 different the 5 different creative sectors for film and TV and games. So there was always a space for someone. But I would say that 80% of my time was in the office. So, and I would do one day working at home, maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks. So going full-time working at home was quite a different setup for me. Because we were doing agile work, it wasn't too hard. We all had all the hardware and the laptops to take straight home. But for a lot of people in the organisation, that we have a cinema as well, so that obviously got closed down. So it's quite a different atmosphere. But I think my main concern was keeping in touch with my team and making sure they're okay, and having flexibility to work. Have those boundaries, so you don't have to start exactly at 9:45 in the morning, because that was, if you need some room to maneuver, just let us know, so we be there for the core hours and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I did think when it first happened, it's like, I can't do this for 3 weeks, and as I said earlier, we're now in 3.5 months, and it's like, okay, I can see there are benefits to it in some ways, but I also think that you do need to have some interaction. And we've seen from all the conferences that suddenly went online and all these kind of events, that the possibilities, but I still think that I need to have more, like to have interaction with people. So I'm looking forward to, even if it's going, we end up going back for one day a week and doing it the other way around, rather than just doing one day at home. That'll be something to look forward to, I hope.
So Anna, what were the kind of the key considerations for you setting up working from home? Because obviously, that wasn't something that you did a lot, as you said. It was just a small part of how the BFI worked. So what were the elements that you really considered about how to set up this new version of your working day?
I think for us, because all of our stuff is application based, and there's, we have to have hard copies of applications. So the immediate thing was how we would serve all the applicants. There was, I think, the initial concern was, well, film and TV has stopped production completely, but animation and video games has actually sort of thrived. Everyone can work from home, but then we have, well, how do we do hard copies? This is all legislation stuff. So we had to go into a sort of immediately looking at different ways of working to support all the people that all of our stakeholders. But I think I've said this before, but my primary concern is making sure my team are okay. We all have the tech to deal with it, but then normally when it's only a few people working at home, the organisation isn't dealing with 300 or 400 people with laptops, and I have to pay a huge amount of credit to our IT team who are getting text messages and phone calls, and we're all texting each other saying, is anyone answering, when there's a slight issue with getting onto the online system and that kind of thing.
I can very much relate, because my team now is working from Zurich and I'm in Cologne. And now, especially these moments when everybody wants to get in the same moment, that builds up pressure very quickly. That's a very, of course. I mean, especially in a live environment, but in general. Also, idea chat. So if there's like 15 people, 15 people right now. So that if you have questions, plus us, if you have questions, please let us know, because this is like a topic dear to our heart, and so we can share them. Also, like resources we can share later on the general Discord. If you have things there, please do. I will bring them up then.
Yeah, if you have some incredible work from home tips, please let us know. So Des, for you, how's the transition been for you into this, lockdown life? Because it seems like you would have had lots of structures already in place to deal with kind of different time zones and talking to people on the other side of the world.
Yeah. So the one thing I didn't plan for was the kindergarten's closing. So I'm the primary caregiver for the kids. So if they're sick or the kindergartens are shut for any reason, I have to deal with it. So we've got toddlers, and they don't understand time as a concept. So they get up about 5:36 every day, which isn't too bad, because that's when I would get up to do like exercise and stuff anyway. But that's one thing I'm a bit grumpy about, because I don't get to do that anymore. And then I work through. They look after look after them till lunchtime, and then I have to do my effectively a late shift for me, which means I finish about 10 p.m. ish. And then, like I said, we've got teams everywhere. So the problem with that is you're in that danger zone of, as I'm coming to the end of my shift, someone else is coming online, and if you get sucked into a conversation or two, next thing you know, it's like 1 a.m. And then I go to bed. But then the kids don't care what time I go to bed. Like, they still jump up and hit me in the head and stuff to get me out of bed. So coping with sleep's been a bit rough. But that's just like the personal impact on me. And I think the kids themselves, like, they're done with me. Like, they've had enough. Like,
Do you have to homeschool them?
No. So this is the only good thing. They're not in like structured school yet. So literally my hat goes off to all you parents out there who have to homeschool their kids and do their job, because that's not a great situation to be in.
Sorry, go on.
My partner's kids are here 50% of the time, and we've been homeschooling, and it's a ride. It's such a big block of time, and they've structured it where they want the homework handed by a certain time every day, like all of these sheets. And so it's like, you have no choice. You have to sit down and spend all of that time doing this work with them. And at first they didn't really know what they were doing, and they were assigning so much work that it felt like my full-time job was now being a teacher until the evenings. And then it was like, I'm exhausted, and I'm sitting here typing up emails and trying to deal with people, and I'm so tired. And meetings at 7, they don't know times. I've had meetings where I've been here at 7:30 in the morning, and one's just burst through the door and gone, oh, so-and-so. And I'm like, it's 7. Why are you even up? Like, what are you doing? It's wild.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, I'm on my own, but the number of times I've seen children running in and out of the back, and you can see the look of stress on people's faces. And when the first 2 or 3 weeks, Joe Wicks was entertaining everyone and all on Facebook. But now it's like you see all the messages on Facebook and Twitter. It's like pass the wine, I can't do this anymore. It's an enormous challenge for people. It's like, oh my God, it's quite hard.
Oh, they're almost out of
Yeah,
school
I mean,
now, though,
I had
so.
a Zoom call. Yeah, I had a Zoom call with someone the other day who has 7 children,
Wow.
and they were just like, "There's nothing I can do. They might burst in, they might not. There's nothing I can do," and they were just broken. I was like,
Yeah.
"That's fine. Don't worry. Everything's okay." So, I think that's the thing that for me, I don't have kids, so I do feel very lucky that there's not that added, especially because Des, when you were like, oh, they get up at like 5 and that's fine, I was like, what? Des, that's not fine.
Yeah.
So speaking of darling children, what stresses are people dealing with? What have you found particularly stressful? Anna, I'll start with you.
I think getting into a routine where I wasn't, normally I'd get up at about 7:30 and I'd leave for work, get to work about 9:30. We're pretty relaxed, and then leave. I'm very strict about my team leaves at 6 when we're in the office. But then I was getting up at 7:30, switching the laptop on, and then at 7 o'clock at night, it's like, yeah, you've just worked solidly without having a break. I mean, I've eaten something, but I haven't had a lunch break. I haven't gone for a walk. So I think after the first 2 or 3 weeks, I started, there was a lot of messaging on social media about mental health and tips and things. And I started reading a few different ones just for my own mental health, and just started, I do still set my alarm in the morning. And, when it first started getting lighter and lighter over here, there wasn't as much traffic around as there is now. I was actually waking up a lot earlier anyway, and I felt calmer because of that. But I am now quite strict about, I don't actually turn the laptop on until 9:30, although I might be on the work phone just checking things and think, okay, I don't need to deal with that. So that I've been quite strict, and I try and make myself go for a walk first thing in the morning, even if it's just literally to get a pint of milk. And it's only sometimes I do a long walk. If I've got meetings, then it'll be a short walk. And then I do make sure I try and stop for lunch, even if it's not a full lunch hour. I mean, I don't think I've ever gone through a full lunch hour anyway, even when I'm in the office. And I definitely try and switch off at 6. Again, the nature of my job and my role as a senior manager, I am expected to be available, but it's like, yeah, the laptop goes off if someone needs you after work hours. You can pick it up on the phone, and you can just make that decision whether it can be dealt with the next day. But I think having some sort of structure is really important, because otherwise you will get, and I felt for Des when he said he can't do his exercise now because of all the routines, because I think exercise has been a real key thing for me. As Des knows, my one big massive outdoor hobby is open water swimming, or just swimming in general, and I haven't been able to do that, so I've had to switch to walking. Trying to run, not very good at it, and cycling, but I keep falling over my bike when I'm not even riding it, so I just can't wait to get back into some water.
Yeah, I mean, that for me, I'm kind of like a triathlete, or an amateur triathlete, and the swimming is a thing that I really, really miss. There's something a bit more pedestrian about kind of running and cycling, is it doesn't feel as special as the water, and so that's the thing that I miss, and I'm also nervous about, because much as they try and tell me that chlorine's going to fix everything and banish all the germs in a pool, I still do feel quite nervous about. But we just had a comment in chat as well from Felix, who said that exercise is his thing as well, is that he likes to do a bike trip before work. So go on a little trip, come back, start work, and then do the same thing at the end of the day, which I love. That's such a good idea. I definitely recommend that. Like you were saying, Anna, I've been trying to do a bit of a walk or something like that, just to make it feel as if I'm leaving and then starting a day. So I think that's a really great tip.
I also do a walk at the end of the evening or a cycle. I mean, I'm just, because I live in Southeast London, I've got the South Circular, and I don't drive, so I'm sort of nervous of the traffic around everywhere. And
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with watching cyclists on busy roads now, because they seem so confident. And it's like I'm trying to get as many tips as possible on how to cycle without getting panicked.
Yeah, yeah. So, Tobias, how about you? What are you finding kind of stressful about our new situation?
So when there was no way to travel anymore, the answer was, for me mostly, the answer was really, okay, either I do now all the things I still wanted to do, or I just drop them. So it was more like a push of cleaning open ends in life. So it starts with the basement. I mean, it's not a direct answer, but I come back to that because it's all the leftovers. So if you travel, it's the open ends, I realized, or had to realize, which stress me more out than the stuff I still want to do. But that's what I know now, like 3-4 months in. So started running, for example, to calm down. So it never did manage to do that. Have a very long alcohol stop phase, because if you do a lot of these events, so it's actually, it's already in the positive side, but the stressing sense of time. Sense of time is, I think, the biggest stressor, because I don't feel, and we know why that is brain-wise, but still, you don't feel, you just see the seasons changing outside. But so, yeah, it's hard to check in if you don't have internal super proper procedures in place. So I'm very curious also how you structure actually your daily rhythm, in a sense that you have like your check in and check out, etc. How you do that? Because for me, yeah, this is now the first time that I really get into OmniFocus, for example. So just one thing. So, but I don't want to again, but for me, it's these tiny details. It's really like, yeah, getting more to it, what was not possible while traveling so much. I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, whilst not that I mean your kids and stepkids, Jupiter and Des, are stressful, but we did have a question in chat that Robin Hartman would like to know, any tips for parents with small children whilst childcare is still not available? So kind of what are your tips for coping with having children and, you know, a demanding career? Jupiter, I'll start with you.
We take advantage of the time that we were allowed to walk outside, like, you know, that hour block at first, and it's expanded. Kids go crazy, it seems, if they're just inside all of the time. So taking like advantage of that hour and going a little bit further away, so like just a different walk, even if it's still the same area, seemed to really help. We also started planning like family activities, because obviously they're home now, and kids all ages seem to play video games. I didn't when I was 4, but so having more time away from the screen was really hard at first, because all of a sudden it was so easy and it was around, and, you know, they were around. But sort of we've taken evenings where we've gone, this evening we're just doing board games from the time school ends until bedtime. There is no TV. And we've been getting like DIY kits. We got a make your own donut kit thing. And we started doing those sort of things in the evenings, just something that's not just screens, so that they're just a little bit, I don't know, less zapped. But it's just really tough making time, to be completely honest. It's especially with younger children. It becomes a thing that you need to talk to your bosses about, because I started explaining that to like Armor. I was like, I'm just not around anymore because I can't be. And they're more understanding.
Des, how about you?
Yeah, so we used to be quite strict with the kids in terms of what they do. So they can only like have screen time 2 days a week. I can tell you right now that is fully out of the window. Yeah, so we kind of relaxed on that front, kind of opposite to Jupiter. So they're what are they? They're 3 and 5. So yeah, there's a lot more Mario Kart time now. And one thing that's been really interesting, I'm kind of like an amateur streamer now. So they want to watch me play games. They just say, "Oh, can you play this game?" I'm just like, "Why?" And I don't understand. But that's been quite fun because I'm so busy. I don't have a lot of time to actually play games, but this has been a great excuse for that. And then yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, man. You've got to get them outside. Luckily, we've got a garden that they can injure themselves in, but just yeah, you need some way to burn that energy off.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is just flexibility. So I'm very fortunate with fellow traveler that they're just like, yeah, we get it. And even though for me it's not great, but like I can catch up on work at the weekend, or I can literally structure my time differently. Like, so one of the members of the team, they take one of their weekdays off and then do it on Saturday or Sunday. Yeah, it's definitely a team thing. If you're fortunate to have a team, Robin, and I mean that like work and at home. Because the other thing that we missed out with childcare is the grandparents are like half an hour away. But of course, lockdown is like, that's cut that off as an option. So you're like, all right, cool. And yeah, and so I guess I'm getting a bit personal here, but it's been a bit tough on my wife and I. Like, our relationship suffered a bit because it's literally like we're ships passing in the night. It's like, boom, they're the kids. I'm going back to the office. I'll see you sometime at midnight, which is obviously bedtime. And then when we're in that get up phase, like, you know, she's in the shower, and then boom, she's out to work. So that's been a bit rough, but we're in a weird situation, right? Like, you just got to try and cope as best you can.
So Des, how do you switch off? Let's talk, you know, how we are finding little ways to cope and kind of, you know, refresh, renew ourselves during this. I
am very fortunate to have sociopathic levels of compartmentalization. So as soon as I shut that door, like, the work is done. I have notifications on my phone set up rigorously in certain hours and stuff. There obviously there's an emergency channel, like they can call me and get me if they need to. But the biggest upgrade I did was that I actually got a desktop PC. Luckily about January, which meant like it physically has to stay here. So there's no temptation for me to work in bed or on the sofa or anything like that. Like, I have to come here. That's been the biggest change, because I downplay my wife here, but we don't have the same taste in TV. So when she has the remote, like, that's a temptation for me to be like, oh, I'll just crack the laptop open then. That's gone now. Like, and it's awesome and I love it. And I guess the other thing, again, from the work perspective, is just kind of like educating them and be like, listen, you know, I know we're small, I know we're a startup, and, you know, I love the work that we're doing, but these are the hours, and outside those hours, like, someone better be on death's door if you contact me in a nice way, because you have to. Like, I've been down that road before where, you know, I worked, you know, 14, 16 hours a day, got a little bit of sleep, had a really poor diet, and that doesn't end well.
No.
You know, luckily I could steer out of it before, you know, I was hospitalized or something. But yeah, you just get restricted. You've got to realize that in the nicest way possible, we're not saving lives here. Like, we're doing great stuff, and, you know, I love this industry. I'm never going to do anything else. But like, for me to perform, for me to execute, I know that I need to be healthy myself, and that means not always being here. So yeah.
Anna, how about you? Because obviously you said exercise was a big thing for you, and that's something we have had kind of severely limited. So what else are you doing to kind of, you know, give yourself that time off?
I think in like I say, the first 2 or 3 weeks when, you know, everyone was a bit, am I allowed to go outside? Can I buy something that isn't essential unless I'm buying 3 other things that are essential? And there was quite a nervousness of, I set up calls with my friend, regular calls, FaceTime. So you just got to have that communication. And when it came to the weekends, like Des was saying, I started being very strict at the weekends. I have to do something. And so first of all, there was a bit of DIY, putting up pictures so I didn't have a blank wall for Zoom. And then I started doing sewing. I was sewing scrubs for the NHS, which made me fit, and I felt like I had to complete them because it gave me a sense of purpose, because I was so angry with the government for them not giving enough PPE. But I think it is really important to switch off. I tried not, I've only just started getting into box sets, because I thought if I start doing box sets from the very beginning, that's it. I'm just going to sit on the sofa all weekend or all evening. And I've actually managed to control myself. And I don't have any television on while I'm working, which I used to do when I worked at home. I'd always have some sort of music or TV on in the background. But now when I'm working, the telly is off, and then when it's time, the telly can go on, or the radio can go on, or I can go and read a book once I've stopped working. So I think it's really important to have those things to do outside of work. And with my team from the first week, I insisted, we have an enormous amount of work coming in still, but because we're an organisation that's had to close its cinema as well, we've had to furlough a lot of staff. So I've had my team on rotation, but all the decisions we made about them were together. And from week one, we have happy hour once a week on a Friday, earlier than we normally finish, and you're not allowed, and everyone, whether they're furloughed or not, and sometimes they might be going out themselves, but there's usually sort of 6 or 7 of us on the call, and you have a drink and you chat and you don't talk about work. And it's really important just to say, what have you been doing, and just see each other, because I really miss the interaction in the office. And yes, I can call people and we can do Zoom, but it's actually just having a chat and talk, how was your weekend, that kind of thing. I really do miss that.
Oh, that's such a lovely idea. I really like that. Yeah, that is that thing of just, I think, mindless chat, because it's not that I'm not talking to people. I'm endlessly talking to people, but it doesn't ever feel like relaxed, just go anywhere kind of, friendly chat. So I think that's a really lovely idea. Tobias, how about you? How are you switching off?
Yeah, I'm slowly arriving here, because apparently it's right now very much going on, and shutting off. I think my answers are always in the other direction, in that sense that now I have the answer to the question what stresses me most, and then I come back to solutions. What stresses me most is actually not to be able to sit down with people, for also like getting a feel how the relationship is there. Because if you are, and with people already, that's easy. At least kinda. If the bond is strong, that's easy. But if you, as soon as you run into challenges, or you would definitely think, now let's sit down, let's get a better feel where things are standing. I think this is the really, really hard part. And not speaking about getting to new people. I think this is really the stressful part. And now working, because usually, like running the festival in Switzerland, that's usually the thing that at least once a month, I'm usually a week there in Zurich. So really to catch up, to get a feeling, to have also an after work drink or do something together. And this year, usually it's half a year ramp up, and it's more like in film production. There's only a very small core team, and then the half year before the festival is happening, it really ramps up, and then, to 4 people. So it's still very small. And this time it was really, we had, so Nina and me, we had more time to sit down together, but then for the rest of the team, we had exactly once when I was there in February, and since then we work remotely, and that's and also for the execution, and that's I think, yeah, we're very fortunate and that it works, but it's definitely a strain. How can you manage in a sense? So to cope, as I had my burnout already like 2012. With a very small, or 11 with a very small conference, but I didn't know how to ask for help at that time. So that's the biggest learning I had to learn in my life. And still, it's not always working, so the structures stay there. I learned to, really to meditate, now to run. And the small things here, it's a counterintuitive answer, because when Corona happened, we just threw us all as a group experience into it. We all said, okay, either we have to disband now because there was clear we couldn't move the festival, and then we wouldn't have done anything together. And this is coming back to the sense of purpose, however good or bad or things are there, but it's something we will all take with us after this, that we tried that. And so our coping mechanism was, in a sense, like work, which is not the right answer in terms of shutting off. But Nina also on site also is also very keen that we all, if Discord is off, then on the weekend, then it is off, and etc. But there's challenges for that. I mean, especially if you're in events, because it is this ramp down. It's like probably like in game dev with a release. So the 2 months upfront, especially also in marketing, not only development, is a challenge. Yeah, but shutting off, I guess, physical well-being. It sounds weird, but it's just physical well-being. Going outside, seeing some green, looking at the air, looking at the heaven once a day. It situates us at that place. That's, yeah, was a longer answer.
No, I liked it. You know, genuinely, I think that is, there's lots of talk about kind of switching off and having a routine. And actually, I think sometimes it is important to acknowledge that you might not be in a role where you can always do that, you know, and I think it is important to acknowledge to yourself when you aren't going to have time to do those things, and that, you know, okay, I'm planning a huge, you know, online event. Things are going to be a bit more stressful for a bit. I'm acknowledging that I'm not doing the things that could necessarily, you know, help my mental health or keep it in the most positive place, because I think, you know, it's just acknowledging that we need those things is the first step. Whether or not we're doing them, it helps you at least, you know that, okay, if I'm having a little wobble, it's because I'm not doing those things and I'm going to come back to them. So I think it is important that we also talk about the fact that we know what we should be doing. We know how to have good routines. We just can't always do it, particularly, you know, in this scenario. So Jupiter, I wanted to ask you obviously the same question, and you mentioned earlier that you already have kind of really good structures in place for switching off. So have they changed? Have you added to them? Have you taken away from them during the pandemic?
So I burnt out a couple of years back because I was working like 7 days a week and never doing anything else. So I had already in place that like after dinner, you stop working, you don't go back to your computer. And I had like weekends, you stop working, you don't go back to your computer. And when the lockdown first happened, other people seemed to be struggling with that. I started getting emails like late Friday, and then Monday I would get an email and it'd be like, you haven't replied for 3 days. It's like, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, I haven't replied for 3 days. And I had like emails come in that was like, it's like already quite late, and I was answering some of these emails, and it was like 10, and they were like, oh, can you hop in a call in an hour? I'm like, that's 11. You're in the same time zone as me. What do you mean? So I'm glad that's kind of settled back down. The biggest thing for me is I couldn't go out anymore, and I had set up my life to almost be like, I guess I'm the type of person where you have to reward yourself, right? You have to give yourself something in exchange for all the stuff that you're doing, and that's how I work. So I had basically planned a midweek event every week. We went to the movies. We all have these cinema cards. And then like a big weekend event. And I was like, you just have to make it through to midweek. You just have to make it through to the weekend. You know, these are when you're going to do big things. And they're gone, obviously, because of the pandemic. And that sucked at first. I was spending weekends just going, this is terrible. I can't do anything. Might as well work, which wasn't the right mindset. So I started sort of like just buying things I've always wanted, which sounds kind of dumb, but obviously I'm not going out, so I'm not spending that money anyway. So I started buying like just dumb stuff I wanted. I started buying, like, I have a macrame kit that I did. I made a macrame, it's terrible, but I made a macrame plant holder thing. And I was like, I've always wanted to macrame, sure. And I started buying plants. Like, I was like, oh, we made it through these 2 weeks of work. Let's get like 2 new plants. This is great. And just doing little stuff like that feel like little rewards. I have been going out more, like outside more, and just taking walks more and doing that sort of thing, and like small DIY projects. But I feel like the biggest change was not being able to go to big events. So instead I've just been treating myself to little treats and to little things I've always wanted, really. I got like Animal Crossing on Nintendo Switch. Play that every day. I got I call it the Wii Ring. It's not the Wii Ring. The Fit Ring for
Ring
Nintendo.
Fit Adventure.
Yeah, and I beat that dragon every couple of days. And I've been doing more stuff like that, which has been very helpful. It feels like a reward.
So, you know, I think I'm gonna touch on mental health. So for you, that sounds like something that, you know, has helped keep your spirits lifted. So how has your mental health fared throughout this? Because it's been, at this point, such a long time.
It's 100 days of this. Just saying, we're at 100 days of this. Like,
It's
how is your mental health? My mental health has been terrible at times. There have been times where I've spent the whole of a Tuesday just sitting in bed going, we'll never come out of this. This is the end of the world. I am so stressed. I have 4 calls tomorrow. I've never had 4 calls before in one day. And I've been super just sad. And that's hard. It's very hard to continue working when you're sad. And I feel like part of what's been important is telling the people that I work for I'm sad and that I can't do it. And I feel like doing little rewards and being like, well, if you do go through this day, it's a hard day, it's tough, everyone has it tough, and you do get this reward, has helped. I've also joined stuff like book clubs and online book club and stuff to talk to people. I don't know if I like reading. I've never liked reading before, but I'm in a book club now, and I read every month, and I'm like, this book was garbage. And we're at a point where it's like, you probably just don't like reading, but I like interaction that's not about games. That's not about work-related topics in the slightest, so.
Yeah, no, that sounds lovely. I mean, yeah, I like the idea of just trashing books online. That sounds very therapeutic.
We get together like every month, and I'm always like, this book was terrible. They were like, really? Like, yeah.
But the stranger thing, it's physical and it has beginning and end, and you always feel where you are. And it is this, I mean, it sounds, of course, obvious, but I can relate very much.
So, Des, how about you? How has your mental health been?
Oh, so initially it was all right. Like, I'm weird. So I'm a bit of a hermit anyway. I just like just getting stuff done. But Tobias mentioned earlier that a big part of my work is doing events and stuff. And it wasn't until I didn't have that I realized, like, whilst I'm out here in exile, it's great. I did use events as kind of like that re-up to get like games energy back. Because, you know, it's always, most of the time it's always positive, and you see people making cool stuff, like, you know, seeing like even old colleagues and friends in the hallway, like, oh, this, come and have a look at this. I'm just like, oh snap, that looks amazing. Or actually, I'm making a game like that, I need to push you off a cliff. So yeah, I and it took me a while to realize that. So to combat that, I just kind of like, yeah, I do non-digital things. I missed it because I had to run out. Sorry about that. But I don't really read that much. So that's not one of my things. But
I don't think it's mine either.
Yeah. But what I have been doing is and again, Tobias, what you mentioned about those open ends. So we've renovated this house and we got to like 80%, and like, oh, it's livable, it's fine. So we got loads of stuff to do, and so it's been quite nice doing like manual labor, which is like completely just not related to being here. So I guess context switching is the short, concise answer. That's been helping a lot. And the other thing, so I've got one friend who I miss quite a lot, who I used to see when I go back to London kind of monthly. So we have been working on a podcast. Like, we worked on it before, but like we're like, no, let's do it more regularly now, because it used to be just monthly, but now we're like, no, let's do it every week. And it's a great excuse to, like, you know, just speak to him, catch up with him, and just talk about stuff. Yeah, they've been the two good things that have been helping out. So yeah, it's cool.
Oh, lovely. I mean, it does sound dangerously productive. You're like, the way I help my mental health is I do a podcast, and
Hey, listen,
very productive.
Baby steps, all right? Like, I'm wired a certain way, so then let's just, yeah.
Every conversation is content if you record it.
Exactly, yeah. So, Anna, how about you? How have you felt kind of during this unprecedented times, as we're all calling them?
I've had my moments of, okay, what's going on, and and I think it's at those points it's like, okay, talk to someone. I think talking is really, really important. Especially, I'm a mental health first aider for my organisation, and that was one of the key things that we kept messaging out to people. You can still contact us if you need to talk to someone. And I think from my own personal point of view, yeah, I've had the odd moment where I was like, frustration, the volume of work, worrying about other people. But then it's like, okay, have a cry, move on, talk to someone. And I'm not being glib about saying move on, but it's like, okay, for you, you need to do something. And I think one of the key things that I didn't realize is taking leave is really important. But when you've got furloughed team members as well, so, and I'm the only one that isn't furloughed, and I've been talking to my boss a lot, and she, my boss is great, and my colleagues, but we're also overwhelmed with work and sort of looking at how we help parts of the industry recover, that actually you need to give yourself some breathing space. Emails can wait. And so after this, I'm having 3 days off for the first time since we've been in lockdown. Obviously, we have bank holidays and weekends and stuff, but and I've got things planned to do, decorating stuff, rather than just, because I get through the week, and by Saturday, I speak to my friend now, and I can see her on the weekends, at a distance. It's like, do you want to do Saturday or Sunday? It's like, no, Saturday is decompression day from the whole week, and then Sunday I'll meet you for a cycle or in a park or something, or in your back garden. But it is really important that you do need to touch base with people and just sort of have people to talk to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned being a mental health first aider, and that sounds really interesting. Could you give us a little kind of, breakdown of what that involves and how it, you kind of use it in your day-to-day life?
I think so. Obviously, you have standard first aiders in the office. Obviously, I'm not by no means is it a professional qualification. It's just having someone there that we're a big organization. If you're going through any sort of difficulty at work, we did a 2-day mental health first aid course with, I think it's Mental Health England. And it was a really intensive course. And I know whenever you go on courses at work, it's all like, oh God, I've got to do a course. And it's like, oh, it's Excel spreadsheet kind of thing. But it was the kind of course that it was so in depth and so interesting. And I met colleagues that I rarely meet. We're in different locations, and we all had a lot of personal experiences to bring as to why we wanted to be a mental health first aider, and just to demonstrate to other colleagues that there are people here you can talk to. We have a HR department, which is great, but they're under pressure as well. Sometimes people won't always get on, or people have issues at home and they just need someone to talk. And it's just having that resource there for someone to go and talk to, and actually say, okay, this is what you need to do. This is who you should be speaking to. Again, you're not there to be a professional, medical professional, but it's actually steering someone to say, look, there are people, it's fine, we all have these issues. And I think from the beginning of pandemic, across all sorts of, across our own organization, across Twitter, Instagram, all social media, there was a lot of messaging about, if you need mental health support, talk to people, and that it's really, and I think it is really important. And we're all in, some might look at me and think, oh, well, you're on your own. You haven't got the kids to teach, etc. Whereas I'm looking at Jupiter, who's got to do the teaching and the work as well. So there's two sides to everything. It's someone being on their own is just as hard as someone. There's no right or wrong with this. People have each have their own difficulties in different ways, and everyone needs to be able to reach out and have support. I think one of the things that I found really distressing when all this first happened was the stories that came out about the rise in domestic abuse and all of that kind of stuff. And it's, I think it's really important that people know there are people you can talk to.
Well, I think one of the things I did want to touch on is what should we expect from employers, during this crisis? Because I think it's the one thing that quite a lot of us have in common is that we are trying to work through this. And so, should employers take some responsibility for kind of ensuring that, people are coping, that they are okay? And if so, what do you think they should be doing? I'll start off with you, Des.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about this one. I mean, because in general, from a company perspective, they'd be like, well, we'll just treat you the same way we treat you as if you're in the office. Like, they wouldn't come round and be like, oh, hey buddy, how's it going? Even though, like, for my style of management, that is what I would do. Yeah, so I think it's all about money, right? Like, where they're saving money on, like, electricity and stuff like that, like, they need to be sort of conscious of their employees and be like, well, hey, actually, we saved that money, but now that's a cost that you're doing, right? Like, instead of being in our office for 8 hours, you're at home for 8 hours, and there's an energy cost to that. So, I'd be expecting my employer to be like, okay, well, here's a bursary to cover that. And then, obviously, we weren't expected to be this long, but as this has moved forward, it's like, okay, this is going to be a long-term thing. I'd expect them to be like, okay, well, let's actually evaluate your working setup. Do you have the right chair, like right desks, that sort of thing? I mean, obviously, this scales with the side of company you're with, obviously. But yeah, so, physical health, I want them to look after that as well. And then for the mental health side of things, just maybe some kind of, like, if they outsource it to like a helpline where it's just like, listen, if you've got things you're struggling with, here's a number that you can call for free, blah, 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 and kind of work something out. And then for the personal side of things, just be like, listen, if there is anything you're struggling with, and it's not just if it's affecting your work, like, please know that there's a channel that you can go through to speak to us directly. And because that's a major thing, right? They can't fix what they don't know about. But they also need to make it explicitly clear that that's not an option for employees.
I think that's really important, that your employer knows that they need to be there for. I think communication is a really important thing. It might be slightly different in the games industry. Everyone seems to be working and stuff, but I'm in sort of seeing companies that might, if they can't get back into production. And I'm worried about the small indie developers. I think there's been a lot about everyone that's doing, we can work from home and we can do, but it's, can they get the money to make games, and the events where they would meet people and engage with people. I think it's really important. It's funny, Des saying about having the right equipment. I've been sat on the sofa for the last 3.5 months, and after an hour of doing Zoom, I can feel I really need to sort out equipment. I think my organisation is very good on the checking in and mental health, and I'm really sort of, with my team, it's like, you just let me know whether you're okay. But yeah, I think the physical side of things is something we could do slightly better on. It's like, I need a proper desk. I'm not expecting them to buy it outright, but you need to check on this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, we are just about out of time. So I thought what I would do very, very quickly is get everybody to give kind of a one sentence top tip, their best idea for kind of working from home, something that's, made it better for you. I'll start off with you, Jupiter.
First, the biggest thing is fine. The biggest thing for me, which we've already talked about a lot, is just set a time that you stop working and physically leave your workspace and just be away from it, be away from your laptop. You need that time away from work. I can't stress that enough. It's what really burnt me out, was not having the mental, like, ability to forgive yourself for not working. You have to just do it. It's the only way you'll end up being able to continue working.
Tobias, how about you? What's your top tip?
I was just looking at my bookshelf. I mean, to what you said, so I think I would say order Slight Edge. That's the book I took much away from. like to take things very step by step. Take the time actually to think about your aims, because the problem is if you don't have aims, that's never enough. And it sounds simple, it sounds counterintuitive, but really to make sure that you don't always put more on your own shoulders. And for not doing that, I think it's really mandatory to have small aims, big aims, etc. But because then you can align what you're doing to how much you want to do it, and also to shut off your brain and close the door mentally via a walk, etc. Because if you have rhythms in place and then there's the urge still to have it in your brains going still, depends on how you manage yourself, I guess. So that would be my biggest one. So Slight Edge, a book like pretty good one.
I like it. Jupiter, that's another book for you there to add to your reading list.
I'll just be like, I hate all books. I don't.
It's the only one.
And so Des, what's your one?
I was going to say what Jupiter said, but I'll think of something
else.
No. Yeah. Okay. So this bit of advice is for people who usually work in an office and are transitioning to work from home, or if they're going to do it part-time. On your work from home days, do get up at the same time, and that time you save on your commute, do something else. Like, don't do any work stuff, just find something else to do. Like, I don't know, read a book, do some exercise, play a video game. Your life will improve if you do that. If you stay in bed till like 10 minutes before you need to work, that's, in my mind, that's a waste of time, because you have to readjust for the other days. You have to get up and do it anyway. So yeah, definitely keep doing that and find something else to fill that time with. You'll feel great.
I love it. Maybe make a podcast. Maybe use that hour to make a podcast. And last but definitely not least, Anna, what is your top tip for our work from homers?
So I certainly agree with everything that everyone said. I would say, following on from what Des said, that get up but do something before you start work, is go and have a walk. It doesn't have to be full on running but just have a walk and some quiet, and do the same at the end of the day as well. Don't finish, put down the laptop, eat, and then just have a breather between starting and finishing work. I think it's really, and I put my headphones on and I just switch off. I've discovered a lot of Southeast London. I didn't realise I knew. It's a great place.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I think my top tip would probably be exercise. So I know it's a really boring one, but even a tiny little bit of exercise, I think it's a good way to challenge, for me to channel my need to be constantly productive. I'm definitely one of those people. And so I think actually seeing that I did, a new personal best, or I lifted a heavier weight, something like that, for me, it's a good way to kind of challenge that need to be doing more and being better into something that isn't staying up till 1 a.m. working. So that's kind of my top tip. But yours were all fantastic. Oh, go ahead.
If I may add one last thing, and actually talking about it, because depending on which culture you're from, so talking about German or also other culture, like really talking to other people and sharing that you're having your challenges too, because that helps. I think the biggest way, it helps also yourself, honestly. It's not only for the others, it's for you, for yourself too. So it sounds simple, but not everywhere it's still, it's considered, a strength to talk about your challenges.
Being able to listen to other people's challenges.
And your sound went away.
Lost
Sorry.
you. I know. Just as you said, be able to listen, you cut out and we could not listen.
Oh, no.
Do we still have you, Jupiter?
Nah.
Oh,
Hello.
no.
We could see you
I'm
still.
back. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
Everyone
back.
froze. That went really weird.
Okay.
I was just going to say real quick, being able to listen is important as well, because people have been a bit more snappy now. Everyone's kind of struggling, and it's very easy to make it a competition in I'm struggling more because, and it's that's just not a way to look at it.
Okay, then we have to add, of course, cutting down social media time.
Delete
Because-
Twitter while we're at it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then let's, yeah.
Yeah, we could
Okay,
have just not had this whole panel. It could have just been delete Twitter. I feel like that would have been enough. But no, I'm very glad we did have this panel. That was really, really wonderful. I really loved all the advice you had. Really helpful, I think, to hear lots of different perspectives on working from home. I do think that it is really helpful to see how other people are coping, what they're doing, to hear what their struggles are. So I hope that everybody watching, enjoyed it as much as I personally did, because I was having a great time listening to it all. And as we said, please do reach out if you're struggling. I hope that this today kind of showed you that everybody's facing their challenges, everybody's having their ups and downs during this. It is unprecedented times, as we've heard, over and over again. But that really is true. We haven't had to go through anything like this before, so please do reach out if you're struggling. And I believe this has been recorded, so hopefully you can listen back, re-listen to the tips. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of Ludicious.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Al.